Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Committee. Firstly, can I ask the clerk to deal with the housekeeping measures, please?
Thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair in case of disruption. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point at the War Memorial in the gardens opposite the front of this building in Bourne Avenue. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on your laptops. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 1 on this morning's agenda, apologies for absence. Do you have any apologies this morning?
Yes, Chair. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillors Filer, Matthews and Sidaway.
And I noticed that I have received an email this morning from Councillor Hilliard with his apologies due to illness.
Okay.
Item 2, substitute members. I don't believe we have any substitute members with us this morning. Item 3, declarations of interest. Members, do members have any declarations of interest with regards to the items that are on this morning's agenda at all? Thank you. Item 4, confirmation of minutes. To confirm the following sets of minutes as an accurate record for the Chair to sign. That is the Licensing Committee of the 12th of December 2024 and Licensing Subcommittees 26th of November, 9th, 11th and 23rd of December and the 22nd of January and the 19th of February, which are all included within the agenda items. Are members happy that I sign those as a true and correct record? Councillor Farquhar.
Yes, just one small note on typo for an apologies which I gave to licensing committee, and it's only that mine and it is a typo. My name has been, the surname has been misspelt. So if that can be corrected, that'd be fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farquhar. Are members happy that I sign those agendas, minutes? Thank you very much. Item 5, public issues. Members, we have received a question from Mrs. Susan Stockwell with regard to the licensing fees and charges, which will be dealt with later on the agenda. And I'd like to call Mrs. Stockwell to the table, please, and for you to present your question. Thank you.
Could fees set for taxi licensing please cover enforcement at the taxi ranks by CSAS or other officers to ensure that drivers not licensed by BCP are neither using taxi ranks nor touting, as well as a contribution to enforcement against cars parked in taxi ranks, to cover all hours when the nighttime economy is operating at appropriate locations. Taxis are such an important contribution to public safety and our nighttime economy that I feel very strongly that they should be supported accordingly. Could fees set for sex establishment licensing please cover the substantial expense of monitoring all of the frequent changes of window displays and A-boards at sex shops and of monitoring the strip clubs for compliance with conditions, in particular the no touching rule and the requirement premises are kept in good condition?
Thank you, Mr. Stockwell. I have an answer. A local authority sets licensing fees that are not governed by statute, so all licensing fees, bar those related to Licensing Act and Gambling Act applications, to enable them to recover their reasonable and proportionate costs of carrying out its licensing functions under the relevant regime. The costs of compliance monitoring and enforcement against an applicant who has been given a licence does fall within the costs of the Council's authorisation procedures. But the costs of enforcement activity against those not licensed, such as an unlicensed drivers using taxi ranks, cannot be recovered through the fee process, as the fees set for the licences must not exceed the costs of administering the process. They are limited to cost recovery. The CSAS officer role is around managing antisocial behaviour, and these officers do not have the capacity to support rank enforcement. The current fee model is based on the corporate uplift to fees to cover inflation and national insurance charges, and a full fee review will take place within 25 to 26 municipal period. Could I just say thank you very much for coming along this morning and asking your question. Thank you. Can I just ask members if are there any comments with regards to the question that's been asked this morning at all that we can look at for future meetings at all? Councillor Williams.
Regarding taxes, to me it sounds like a fairly good move forward if we can afford to do it by having CSAS officers ranks at night, because it is a bit of a dangerous place to be sometimes. So I would support that.
Thank you. Councillor Farquhar.
Yes, I understand the reply to the questions, but it kind of misses the opportunity, and I'm so pleased that Ms. Stockwell's come in to ask the question on behalf of the public, because it is a concern for many that's related to the nighttime economy and the administration and the management of taxi ranks. I understand that within this committee we are limited to the application of the legislation as it stands, particularly for the recovery of our fees, etc. But I think the question must be asked that when you go to other towns, such as Brighton and others along the or coastal towns which have a nighttime economy, there is always room for improvement, for learning from others on how the overall picture based around taxis is actually managed. When we look at our own town, so particularly the Old Christchurch Road, which I think is many would accept is the central hub of the nighttime economy, there are restrictions as regards traffic, and there's restrictions as regards where taxis can pick up from to ensure the quick dispersal of patrons from the variety of clubs and restaurants and fast food outlets in that particular area. So it's a more holistic picture, I think, for the community protection in the way that we actually manage our nighttime economy as a local authority. So I would certainly support if it was suggested that a working group could look at that and what role the licensing committee has to play in actually supporting the nighttime economy and ensuring public safety, perhaps in cooperation with the public safety committee board partnership, I should say, the public safety partnership. It has been a concern to me on many occasions whereby we've been limited as a committee to have our input as regards how we could make a difference, a positive difference for our visitors and residents within the towns. When it comes to the sexual entertainment venues, I have raised before that there is a concern that how it is actually administrated and how rigorous the local authority is in ensuring that standards, as Ms. Stockwell said, of no touching rules is actually enforced. Now, I'd be reassured to speak to officers that actually take part in that role, but perhaps there is an opportunity as a committee to consider the frequency. And I know that in the reply, then it's down to resources, etc., and there has to be reasonable costs for the administration for the enforcement. But it may well be beneficial to this committee to discuss that as regards what frequency it is and how issues are actually uncovered in sexual entertainment venues. There has been, I've reported myself on social media a variety of reports, and I've had the good fortune to have receive a reply from the local authority as regards what goes on in these establishments, and that it was dealt within the regulations and their procedures. However, my question remains, should it make it into social media, then why did it make it into social media, and are we checking as a local authority on these establishments as often as perhaps we should be? So I know that's a long-winded way of going about that. I would support perhaps an exercise in partnership with the safety partnership to actually look at, could we as a local authority do more on this committee, and do we have a role in actually having input, particularly that we cover reviews of licensed premises. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Farquhar. Any further comments, Councillor Kelly?
I believe
Sorry, Sophie.
That's all right, thank you, Chair. Just to come back on Councillor Farquhar's point, so in Bournemouth Town Centre there is a regular enforcement on the taxi ranks. So as part of Operation Nightjar, which is the policing exercise, they have patrols on a Friday and Saturday night of uniform patrols. That enables our parking enforcement team to also work alongside them. So there, as part of that, Old Christchurch Road is a focus, and rank enforcement is also a focus, and they've been really successful on that, issued a number of civil penalties alongside that, and that's something that is ongoing because Operation Nightjar is also ongoing. Alongside that, we also have a schedule of proactive visits within the licensing team as well. We're just finalising them for this year. We did a number last year as part of our normal days of action, which is our multi-agency partnership days of action, including police and wider services as well. And that includes licensed premises within it. So that undertakes rank inspections, that looks at vehicles that are on those ranks, and it also looks at licensed premises. So Sarah to my left has been part of most of those days of action as well. And we will continue that with a schedule going forward into 25-26 as well. In fact, we're looking to potentially increase that as well, around the number of visits that we'll be doing into the nighttime economy.
Thank you, Sophie. Was there any further comments at all?
Just for myself, and thank you so much for the reply. And I think it's very useful to have that on the public record as regards what the licensing authority as a whole is actually doing to ensure the safety of our visitors and residents.
Thank you. Councillor Howe.
Yeah, I just have a query about, where the line is in terms of being able to charge cost recover in relation to services offered. Are we saying that we can't include in the cost of licenses the any actions that we take in order to make sure that the rights that taxi drivers get under their licenses are capable of being exercised?
My understanding is that the authority can only charge the recovery of the production of the licenses. Anything outside of that wouldn't come under the auspices of the licensing committee or the licensing function. I think it's already been mentioned that the CSAS officers, so we would have to look at maybe bringing something to this committee with regards to then forwarding it on based on the question that's been asked this morning.
So I just makes me wonder if taxis were not being able to operate properly, perhaps because the ranks were being parked in, or any other circumstance that might interfere with their legitimate rights as purchased by way of license. What would that action be? Would that action would be against the council? Does the council have a duty to maintain that separately from its licensing role?
I think I might ask Sophie to comment on that one, if you could, please.
Yeah. So when we're dealing with non-statutory fees, we are reliant on case law. And that looks at the principles of, when you go through a court that then hits case law, it looks at the principles of charging models. So CSAS is a separate service. It's not something we can include within the licence fee model, but it is and CSAS is also a non-statutory service. So it's a service that every year we have discussions on the continuity of that service and the feasibility of that service going forward. We're lucky that 25-26 and 26-27 we do still have a CSAS within the budget, but it is a non-statutory delivery. I'm quite happy to, as we've already said, we are doing a full fee review in this financial year, and I'm quite happy to explore it within the boundaries of the case law that we've got around Hemmings and Westminster, and look at what we can do within the parameters of the legislation and be as flexible as we possibly can. We do have a CSAS service for next year, and they do work into the evening as well, although they are confined up until 10 o'clock. So anything we can do within those time parameters, I'm quite happy to explore. The additional benefits of having a CSAS service, not necessarily something that needs to be recharged into the licence, but the boundary of them and what they can do within their role.
Thank
Chair,
you. Thank you.
yeah, if I can come back. I don't think the CSAS point is particularly relevant, because that's about how you deliver a service. My question is, what obligations do we have as a council in relation to taxi drivers to make sure that they can exercise their licences freely and not be inhibited by actions of the member of public or the council in terms of, as the example I gave, or others, because that's the first question you need to answer before you then go on to discuss whether you can recover costs on, relating to those actions.
I think Mrs. Cole would just like to.
Yeah, I might be able to assist a little bit. So, as far as licensing fees are concerned, it is on a cost recovery basis, as you've understood. That does leave room within that model for compliance checks for the licensed driver. So that's half of it. So they can incorporate some enforcement costs, but generally based on the service of them. What you're now referring to, isn't it, is everybody else that might be jumping in and using those ranks. So that's what we can't use, the licensing fee. We can't raise money through the licensing fee for that. So I think you understand that, what you're asking.
Well, I'm not exactly understanding that, because I'm questioning it, because if you have a rank and there is, as somebody parked in that rank or picking up somebody in that rank and they're not licensed to do that, they are interfering with the rights of licensees under their licenses. So, do we have any obligation as a council to do anything about that? Or do we just give out these licenses and it's up to the taxi drivers whether they, we have no responsibility, no service offered to them in relation to their use of those licenses and the benefit they get from them. Well, if you buy something, you accept a degree of service back, don't you? And as a council, if we are legally obliged to provide a service to them, one would have thought that could be linked to the licence fee.
It can't, but we take your point, and I think Sophie's already mentioned what is happening with rank checking. It's not that it's not being done, and we aren't getting a massive number of complaints about it, because if we were getting a massive number of complaints, it would be something, yes, the licensing team or the council would focus on. And it generally is the taxi drivers that would complain, the hackney carriages, they would rightly complain into the licensing team, and then that does get dealt, I believe, as it occurs. And I think that's where what Sophie's explained to you, that the operation that they do includes the checking of the ranks. So it hasn't been acknowledged as a major problem.
I don't wish to go on about it, but I mean, I still think it would be interesting to know what the council's legal responsibilities are in terms of whether it has to do that work or not. You know, even from an assessment of whether, you know, a council that's, you know, potentially going to go bust soon, it's like, you know, you need to understand what you need to spend money on and what you don't need to spend money on.
Yeah, I get your point. I haven't got the answer for you. It is all just about choices. You know, it's where it ranks in choice of where people want to spend or the council wants to spend, you know, their budget.
Okay, so you're saying we don't have to offer these services to the taxi
I'm not saying
drivers?
that because I don't know. I
But
don't want to be...
it's not a choice then, is it? If we don't, if we have,
I don't know. I can't just.
You see my point
I
though.
do, Councillor
The
Howell. I do see
council
your
doesn't
point.
understand what it has to deliver to taxi drivers in terms of, you know, associated services.
Well, I'm sure it's probably not just limited to taxi drivers either. It's about any enforcement, about any service that we offer and any regulatory licence scheme.
Yeah, well, I think that there's a long history of councillors questioning whether enforcement happens properly. Although we have some very good officers involved in that service. Thank you.
On the balance of the discussions we've had on this point, would it be possible for an item to be brought back to the committee with regards to your review of the licensing fees, etc., with a view to advising the committee exactly where we stand? Yeah. If that could be put on the forward plan, would members be happy with that? Yeah, thank you very much. So we look forward to that appearing on the forward plan. Thank you, members, for that. Right, moving on then to agenda item 6, licensing fees and charges for the municipal period 2025-2026. Mrs. Rogers, please.
Thank you. This report is to review the fee regimes for scrap metal dealers, pleasure boats, sex establishments, meaning the sex shops and the sexual entertainment venues, together with taxi and private hire fees, which should apply from the 1st of April 2025. These are not statutory ones, but where the council has discretion over. Please note at paragraph 23 of the report in the table, there's a typo at the Hackney carriage and private hire driver figure. The figure should be 1,277, not 12,277. The members are asked to consider the proposed fees in Appendix 1 and either agree, amend, or the fees for consideration or maintain the current fee structure. Once the decision has been made in respect of the scrap metal fees in particular, a recommendation should be made for this fee structure to be made by Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Do members have any questions for the officer at all with regard to agenda item 6? Councillor Chapman-Moore.
Is there a reason why we can't put the premises licence fees up in line with inflation?
Yes, because they are statutory fees. We haven't got any discretion over changing those. It's only these regimes in the report that we can.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Farquhar.
So just confirmation on the proposed increase in the fees. Those are in line with the inflation based on what date?
Yeah, so we've had a 2.8% pay award increase for staffing fees, 1.2% national insurance, and there's also a further 1% within the national insurance bracket as well. So that is why you've got a 5% increase. But as we previously said, we are also doing a full fee review in 25-26. But this is just in line with the increased staffing costs.
Thank you, Sophie. Councillor Farquhar.
And may I ask if these relevant sort of organisations, you know, from scrap metal through, you know, sexual entertainment and boating licenses, etc., have they got a forum and organisation bodies, and has that been approached, and have they given you initial sort of feedback as regards this proposed increase of 5% across their fees?
Each local authority is different in how they apply their fees. So, the legislation allows us to have full cost recovery, but the legislation does also allow for the general fund to fund fees as well. Now, obviously, there's a requirement for us to ensure that the fees are proportionate and aren't overburdensome on the licence holders, but also that they're not burdensome on the taxpayer as well, and that they're supplementing the fees. So this is on a cost recovery basis, on the basis of the administration of the licence itself. Now, obviously, every different council will have, different. There's not a flat pay structure across all local authorities for licensing officers. So fees will differ dependent on, what they're seeing within their functions, and also what they're seeing from their officer costs as well. But there is a comparison table from a taxi perspective within the report, and there are comparable figures at other local authorities. We're not significantly out of kilter.
So if I may, Chair, then, these particular organisations and businesses will just have to accept the fee because that's the cost of living. That's the nature of it. And if not, then they'll have to seek to make their money elsewhere. My only follow-up question would be, are we happy and comfortable that our enforcement officers and our administration staff for these licences, are we up to strength? Are we taking into, because I noticed that some of the licences have gone down, in some cases quite substantially, particularly if there's a typo, but they have gone down across the piece. So my question mark is really on the nature of these licensing fees are to recover the costs of the administration, which includes the personnel which administrate that. So are we comfortable that as a licensing authority that we have sufficient staff to license and to carry out the necessary checks and enforcement at this time?
I think that would be the idea of the fees being presented to the committee this morning, but I would just ask Sophie or Sarah just to confirm that.
Yeah, so yes, in short, we are happy with the level of resource attached to that, and the fees are reflective of the functions that we need to undertake. So where you've seen a decrease in fees, we have also we've been through a period of transformation as BCP, and part of that is around use of technology, and we've had some technological advances, and again we've got another piece of work that we're looking at systems usage, and that will continue to develop as technology develops. And where technology helps us with these fees, then there may be a change attached to that as well. Cost of that versus process-based fees as well. So that's why you see a shift in the fees both ways. We've had a couple of new systems changes in the last year, which is helping around administration, which may be why you're seeing a lower fee in some areas.
Thank you, Sophie. Mrs. Cole.
Councillor Farquhar, once the fees have been agreed for the vehicle fees, the taxi vehicle fees and the operator fees, they do have to be published, and there will be an opportunity for any operators and vehicle owners to raise comments and send those in, so that the legislation requires us to do that as well. So they will have an opportunity to make a comment.
Thank you. Any further debate? No. In which case, I will propose from the chair that the committee agrees the proposed fees as stated, and I'm looking for a seconder, please. Councillor Farquhar. Thank you.
How about a second?
Are members in favour of the proposal? Yeah. Thank you very much. Proposed. Yeah.
We just get a formal recommendation. Just vote on that. Sorry.
Yeah. The decision agreed to respect the scrap metal fees should then be recommended to Cabinet. So yes.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Moving on then to item 7, the forward plan. Sarah or Sophie?
So, sorry. So just picked this up for update. The obviously we dealt with the first one, the pleasure boat and boats person licensing policy has been put back now to go in the 14th of May. The statement of licensing policy that has been finalised. We did an extended consultation which expires on the 17th, next Monday, because we were concerned about the lack of engagement we had from the trade. We'd only got about 6 or 7 responses overall, so it was decided that we would reach out to them again, nudge them, remind them, and give them a further opportunity to make comment. Still not received anything from them as yet, but hopefully we will do in the next week. When we get that, then we will bring the consultation, the responses to you and the recommendations for your approval. The full public consultation is in hand with the Hackney Carriage and Private Hire, and that's coming to you in September. And we will be working on the statement of licensing principles of gambling policy. We're yet to determine a date for that, and that has to go out for a full public consultation also.
Do you remember with the statement of licensing policy, we were waiting on guidance coming from the Gambling Commission, which is why they just did that little.
And clearly, if we could, for the next meeting, the item that we spoke about earlier on with regard to a review of the taxi rank administration, etc. And then committee briefings. Is that you, Linda, or?
So the training and the briefing paper is going to be done outside of the meeting. So that's all the items of business. So unless there's any urgent business from anyone, I'll pass over to you to conclude.
Okay, thank you very much. So is there any comments with regards to the forward plan at all? No, thank you. Right, there being no further business, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you for your attendance.